Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. We're up to page 90 of Volume 4 of Rabbi Avigdor Miller's new translation and commentary of the Mesillat Yesharim, The Path of the Just. And we just got about a page and a bit, nearly 2 pages into ignorance being the second of, I don't know how many obstacles there are. Let's have a look. There's flattery. So 3 major obstacles. So what are the obstacles to humility? Well, there's a lot, but they can be chiefly summed up in 3 major categories. Number 1, too much good. That is an overabundance of pleasures. Somebody who has an opportunity to derive a large amount of pleasure from the world. These will certainly be an obstacle to a person seeking genuine humility. Because the more he indulges himself, the more he just gets lost in his world of pleasure. And not only is it something that kills humility, but it also kills off all the other traits that are of any value when a person goes to a point where they're just continually indulging in pleasures and just they're pleasure seekers. Whether they're thrill seekers, whether they like food, whether it's physical relationships, whatever it is, money, fame. It could be fame. They're just intoxicated by fame. Power could be power. This is all detriment to acquiring the genuine trait of humility. Number 2, we began to look at ignorance, and so we're going to continue. So I'll just track back a paragraph or 2. It's always good to sort of overlap from the last lesson. Okay, so this is Rabbi Avigdor Miller. The less learned a person is in Torah, the more complicit he is. The people in the street who are most complicit, they haven't the slightest idea what could be wrong with them, and therefore they're the most certain that they are right. So big thing is that when somebody's arrogant, they've got this, or somebody who's ignorant, I should say, they have a blind spot, and when you say blind spot, it's a fairly large spot, and through their ignorance, they will inflate themselves with arrogance. As it says in the Mesillat Yesharim earlier, a little bit earlier in this paragraph, arrogance is always found in people who are more foolish. And so, somebody who is foolish is somebody who is essentially ignorant. And the less one knows, the more that they think they know. And that inflates them. They get puffed up. The more a foolish person is, the more arrogant he is. Our sages of blessed memory said, a sign of arrogance is poverty in Torah. So essentially, Pesach revolves around the concept of humility. Being lowly, eating the bread of the poor. Essentially, flat bread is the bread of a pauper. And it's essentially no different to normal bread, except it is devoid of air. And air inflates it and makes it more than what it actually is. You've heard of the chocolate bar, the Aero bar. And the whole concept of an Aero bar chocolate is that it's got pockets of air in it. And so the air gives it a more inflated view of what it actually really is in terms of the sheer substance of it, which is it's tiny. There's actually, it's most of what you're seeing is air. And so the same with the ignorant person who becomes arrogant through their own foolishness. And so they think, I know what's right. This is, religions. It's all just a scam. I was talking to a gentleman not too long ago, and I see the way he talks. He's pretty confident. Then after like 10-20 minutes, I think we talked for about an hour. I think we might have even gone over an hour. I could see this guy really hasn't spent that much time on the subject, and he's kind of everything that he's known up to this point. He kind of just draws from, what he's kind of been sort of served on the main road as he's travelled down the main road. And he hasn't nothing sort of drawn him off really to kind of question anything that's sort of being fed on that main road, if I can use that analogy. So, and he's a smart guy. This is not a guy who's an imbecile. This is a guy who's smart. But there's various things that happen. A person throws up roadblocks and fences in, and curtails what it is that they believe to adhere to what they want to do, what their desires are. Heaven forbid you learn anything that's going to mean that you're going to have to, change something that you're used to. And this is the whole thing. People are frightened that they're going to learn something that's going to mean that they're going to actually have to stop doing something that they get a lot of pleasure out of and they enjoy. If you strip it all back, that's one of the chief reasons people kind of fear any type of religion, is that they think it's going to rain on their parade, and many times with many false religions, that's actually the truth. It will do that. And there's so many out there that are not the real McCoy, so to speak, that it's little wonder people are kind of cynical about it and they don't trust it. But at the end of the day, just because you've had a bad experience with a religious, false religious group, and it could have been to the point where maybe they broke up your family. There was one guy who was part of the 12 Tribes cult, which resides out at a place called Peppercorn Creek, out in New South Wales. They've got a franchise. They've got the Yellow Deli franchise across the world. And this is all the hallmarks of a cult, a group of people that adhere to a specific sort of lifestyle that's been concocted by a minority, a small group. And you get involved in that group, when you get introduced to it, you get shown all its good aspects. But once you join, depending on your financial status and your skills when you joined, it's, let's just say you're treated a little bit differently. This one gentleman, he was involved in the 12 tribes. He had a wife there, he had children in there, and they had I think there was a falling out between them or something. And the cult whisked the family and the children off to one of their other communes in another country, and forbid them to have any contact with the father. So the father was forbidden to have any contact with his children. So this is for a father, it's a declaration of war. It's World War III. And so the father says, okay, so this community won't allow me to see my kids. They're hiding them, and the government seems to be very ineffective at doing that. And so this guy ended up just totally renouncing all forms of religion in the Bible. He just said, no, I don't. It's all a load of nonsense. And I got the pleasure of, or not the pleasure, but I got the opportunity to have a conversation with him just briefly at a couple of gatherings. And, the guy's just gone, yeah, no. There's probably very little to any chance that he's ever going to sort of come around, because when you have your children taken away from you, you don't get to see them grow up. It's a really hard place to come back from. And so, but at the end of the day, what's going to be your breaking point? So does that mean you've got a breaking point? So, you're invested in something, you're invested in a religious belief, in a lifestyle, and you get a couple of hits, you get a couple of hard hits, and the hard hits can come from the organization that you've invested all your faith in, or they can come from outside. It doesn't matter. Certainly if they come from within the organization that you've trusted and they betray you, you're going to throw your arms up in the air and leave, or you're going to maybe take a shot at the leader if you get a chance. Give him, punch him in the kisser, so to speak. But even outside of something outside that's totally unrelated, your life falls apart. Maybe there's a war, maybe there's another Holocaust or something like that. Is there going to be a point where you're like, okay, yeah, no, I'm out? And if that's the case, then what you're doing, it's not probably gonna be something that's genuine, because you've got to have a point where you just tap into Hashem's strength, and then you just go, well, whatever happens, I'm not letting go. Obviously, if it's a false religious group, you know what I mean. So and not everybody's got the opportunity to have the group turn on them like this guy did. But this guy went fully the other way, and he's rejected religion entirely and anything to do with the scriptures entirely. So it remains to be seen. Since lost contact with him, I don't know where he is. if he's ever going to kind of start to sort of edge his way back. But most people don't get that when they're involved in the cults. They might have a good experience and then take that all the way to the grave. And then on the other side of the veil, see to follow their way. So in a way, this guy kind of got dealt with. You could argue it was a rough way, but at least it bounced him out of falsehood. So there's myriad of traps that can trap us, that can lead us astray. But you've just got to hold fast and go, I want the truth. I want to find the truth. So you got to keep praying. You got to keep doing whatever you can in terms of applying legwork to find out what the truth is. I just want the emet. I don't want falsehood, and I don't want anything sugar coated. If I'm off the track and I'm doing something horrifying, please stop me in my tracks and read me the riot act. It's for my own good. If you stop me in my tracks, even violently, heaven forbid that it has to come to that, and just bear down on me to the point where I'm like shaking, if it'll get me to be shaken from falsehood and grab onto the truth. Whatever it takes, I'm not asking, for this to be a rough ride, but if it requires a rough ride, okay. Because at the end of the day, it's my eternal soul. I'm not asking to be beaten up, beaten to a pulp to make the right decision. But if that's what it takes, then please do that, because ultimately it's not going to be a good experience enduring it, but ultimately the end result is going to be fantastic. And these are the types of things you have to pray to the Heavenly Father about in this type of language. You can't sort of trick Heavenly Father with clever speech or anything like that, or kind of make deals with him. You just got to go, at the end of the day, I just want to find out what do I have to do in the grand scheme of all that's going on. What's my role here that I should be playing for the good and not the bad? Please, can you light the way for me? Now, I know I'm not deserving of having any siyata dishmaya here, heavenly assistance, but at the end of the day, I'm acknowledging that I don't deserve it. But nonetheless, even though I'm not worthy of deserving any assistance, can I receive some nonetheless? Please, and keep knocking on that door every day until somebody comes to answer it, and then you get some help. The less learned person in the Torah is the less learned a person is in the Torah. I finally got it right. Says Rabbi Avigdor, the more complicit he is, the people on the street are the most complicit. They haven't the slightest idea what could go wrong with them, and therefore they're the most certain that they are right. Of course, we have to understand that when a person does know Torah, it could give him an excuse for pride. But in general, Torah knowledge causes a person to straighten out. His mind straightens out because learning Torah clarifies his faults. When a person doesn't learn Torah, he's not aware of his faults, and therefore the ignorant person has the clearest conscience. I'll read that again. When a person doesn't learn Torah, he's not aware of his faults. Therefore, the ignorant person has the clearest conscience. So, as you're coming into this, you are getting an attack of conscience. You are feeling guilty. You are feeling uncomfortable. That's exactly how you're meant to feel. That's exactly how you're meant to feel. You have people come in and they go, I don't feel comfortable with this. It doesn't feel like warm and fuzzy. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I feel challenged. I feel judged. I feel like this is not really comfortable. It's not a comfortable fit for me. That's the whole idea. That you're going to have to meld yourself to sit into the shape of that seat. The idea of the truth of everything that's beyond the veil and the plan of creation is not something to conform to your shape that you are now. You have to change your shape to what the emet is. And sometimes that's not fun. Sometimes that's not comfortable. So don't come to, your mentor or whoever's leading you at the moment and say, I'm just, since I've been involved in this, I'm just not enjoying life as much because I feel guilty about things and I've always get an attack of conscience. Well, the idea then is whatever it is that you're feeling uncomfortable about, you rein that in and deal with it. This other thing that you were doing before, you never felt bad about it because there was never something showing you the contrast of how wrong it was. He doesn't feel that there's anything wrong with him, and that's the most arrogant attitude, to feel that there's nothing wrong when there is. Quoting from the Zohar Balak, that's the Parsha Balak, 193b. A sign that a person does not know anything is that he praises himself. The sages also said, according to Tractate Bava Metzia 85b, a coin inside of an empty pitcher cries out, knock, knock. So, somebody who has a single coin in a plastic bucket and, starts to run with it, it bounces around the interior of the bucket and makes loads of noises. But when the bucket is full of coins and a person tries to run with a full plastic bucket of coins, it's not going to make any sound because there's no movement inside the bucket at all, because it's completely full to the brim with coins. So it's a fantastic mashal, that one. A coin will make the most noise when it's an empty pitcher. If the pitcher is full of coins, it can make any noise. Emptiness causes a person to make the most noise. Emptiness causes the person to make the most noise. Wisdom after wisdom with this stuff. This is fantastic. The Mesillat says, they also said, according to Tractate Bereshit Rabbah 16.3, they ask a question of the barren trees, meaning the trees that don't grow any fruit. Why is it that your voice is heard? And the trees said, would that our voice should be heard and we should be remembered. Rabbi Avigdor says, when the wind blows the boughs of the barren tree sway with more violence, and you hear the swishing of the branches. Boughs that are heavy with fruit cannot move so easily, therefore they don't make a noise when the wind blows. The barren trees make noise in the wind because they have nothing else. And this is what, people on Instagram and TikTok and all the social media applications or programs, put themselves, for 30 seconds, up on camera, scantily clad, because that's all they have. They have a good body, and that's all they have. They don't have anything else. They don't have a good personality. They don't have any idea of any correct propriety. This is why a lot of them, have struggled with getting serious boyfriends and husbands, because they're putting themselves out there on show, and all that they have is a finite body that eventually is eventually not going to be the way it might look at that time. And so they're leading with all they have. And so like these trees that have no fruit, they make sounds so people look at them and go, oh, look, hear the tree creaking, And so they get on TikTok and they make a noise with whatever it is, the only thing that they have. Because they've really got nothing else, because they've got through life up to that point using their looks to get them places. And in this case, to give them an income so they can live a certain lifestyle. But that's all going to come crashing down as they get older. And it's horrifying. It is the most horrifying wake-up call that you can ever imagine. And then down the track, a lot of them end up getting cancer related to the body parts that they put on show. They also said, they asked a question of the barren trees. I read that too. Okay. Back to the Mesillat. We have already seen that Moshe, who was the choicest of all human beings, was the greatest anav of all human beings. According to Bamidbar, Numbers 12:3. So Moshe was the most humblest of all human beings. We see that the greater you are in knowledge of Torah, the more you are able to be an anav and understand the importance of humility. Number 3, this is part 8 of chapter 23. Remember chapter 23, we're looking at the ways of acquiring humility, anava. So this is the obstacles of anava. Category 3, flattery. This is a big one. They're all big ones. Rabbi Avigdor says the third obstacle is having people around who constantly flatter and compliment. So if you've got a circle of people that constantly flatter and compliment you, get out of there. That scene in the first Iron Man movie where he makes the Iron Man suit in the cave, and he comes out with the flamethrower, and then he gets he shoots out of there. Place is about to blow up. You need to get out of there like that. So if you're in a group of people that just constantly flatter and compliment you, get out as quickly as you can. You don't want to be in a group of people that continue to tell you how amazing you are. And people do that. They pay money to people to hang out with them. They put them on a salary. Maybe it's some of their bodyguards, their cook, their personal cook. Maybe they have a media advisor. And all these people are their friends, but they're really, the truth is they're there because they're paying them to be there. And so they're sitting there all having, a lunch together. And whatever this person says, everyone's going to think it's amazing because they're paying their salary. And they're a famous person as well. And, it doesn't hurt to agree whatever the person says. It's not likely you're going to get somebody at the table and going, what? I don't agree with that, And then there'd be a juicy discussion and they're just all surrounded by yes men. It's detrimental to anything in any industry. We see it was detrimental to George Lucas in the 2000s, leading up to the 2000s, whenever he made the prequels. This is a guy that came out of obscurity after a successful string of films in the late 70s and early 80s that changed the face of science fiction. And it just became a huge enigma. There was a bit of quiet for a few years. And, he came back out of obscurity into working on a new series of prequels. And he didn't surround himself with anybody except yes men. People that go, oh, yes, George. Yes. Oh, yes, that's an amazing idea. That's an amazing idea. Walking around with this little pen, signing off on various designs with nobody there to sort of say, listen, George, that design that you signed off, this is a barren desert planet. You've signed off on a type of a lizard type of humanoid. Surely that wouldn't be something that would, or reptilian, I think it was. Or what do you call it? A amphibian type humanoid. He ticks off for a desert climate. Because you're trying to have as much of realism as you can to the science fiction world. But everybody around him just said, yeah, that's a great idea, George. And these films, when they came out, they were not very well received, let's just say that. So don't surround yourself with people that are going to tell you how wonderful you are. Having said that, you don't want to surround yourself with your enemies either. I'm not saying that. But you don't want to, if somebody says, oh, I think you're amazing, you're such a great guy, you're so, no, I'm not a great guy, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't follow me home. You don't hang out with me all the time. You don't know what goes on through my head sometimes. Don't tell me I'm amazing because you don't know me. But I've been with you for 10 years. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's also a great cause of misleading people into thinking that they're really something. So people can just flatter somebody and tell them they're so amazing. Maybe they've got an agenda. Maybe they want to influence you somehow to do something or implement a certain law. Maybe it's, in the world of politics or something. For example, since people always need favors from wealthy men, they're always praising them, and the wealthy men can begin to think that their praises are true. Elon Musk walks into a room. Even the people that are, against Doge or whatever that is, and they're vandalizing Teslas or something. If half these people that saw Elon Musk, if they saw him in real life walk into a room, they go, oh my gosh, it's Elon Musk, and they say they hate him, and up until, his allegiance, when it became apparent in the last 6 months or however long it's been, they thought he was unreal. But at the end of the day, somebody famous walks into a room, everybody's like, oh, look who it is. Like, even if you might not particularly like them as an actor or as a public figure, you're still in awe of the fact that you're seeing a famous person. So the Mesillat Yesharim says, another of the things that destroy a person's humility is the befriending and making use of employees or associates who are flatterers, who in order to deceive them with their flattery for their own benefit, praise and exalt them. Number one, they exaggerate his good qualities to the extreme. Number two, and they also add attributes that he does not have at all. And sometimes, number three, what he actually has is the opposite of what they praise him for. Rabbi Avigdor says there are 3 levels. First, they praise him for qualities he really does possess, only they exaggerate them. Second, even when he doesn't have any good qualities, they persuade him that he does. Third, and sometimes they persuade him to think that he has qualities which are the opposite of what he actually is. And you see that portrayed on the silver screen, over the years with, larger than life villains who surround themselves with henchmen, and they tell them, oh yeah, you're amazing, and it's completely opposite whatever that part of amazing it is of what they actually are, and it makes an extreme sort of contrast. Okay, so ultimately we must realize, says the Mesillat Yesharim, that even the best people have a weakness in their minds. Don't think that you're strong-minded, that you can resist. Everybody has a weakness, and everyone has a weak nature and can be easily persuaded, especially regarding something to which he is naturally inclined. It's a human nature for a person to be inclined to think of himself as excellent. Therefore, when he hears these words coming out of his mouth, coming out of the mouth of someone who he believes, it enters into him like a poison, and he falls into a trap of arrogance and is broken and ruined. So, whenever you're starting to flatter somebody, think about why you're doing it and think about what detrimental effect it can have. And this is not to say that, when you ring the person, you say hello, that you're rude to them, or you be flippant, or talk down to them. Heaven forbid, you can be polite and speak to them in a loving way. But when you keep telling them, oh, that was unreal, like it's just, you see celebrities being interviewed and the interviewers are telling them how unreal they are, and it's just cringeworthy. You just go, oh, I'm your biggest fan. I'm your biggest fan. I've watched all your movies. Okay, great, thank you. Like, what can I say? Like, do you want me to give you some money for that? I don't know. I like you because you like my movies. If you're a good person, I like you anyway, whether you know even who I am or not. Okay, so the Mesillat Yesharim says, this is Rabbi Avigdor Miller. We think that it's not so good to be flattered. But the author is telling us that the person is ruined by it. So, some people think flattery is dangerous, or some people think flattery is counterproductive, or not good. In actual fact, it's not. It's not that it's not counterproductive or can be bad. It's actually ruinous. It's actually poison. It's actually it's like an act of violence. You should see somebody who goes out of the way to flatter somebody as a person who is technically entering into an act of violence against that person, because ultimately they're trying to kill them, but they're just doing it in a different way than actually using physical force. What they could achieve potentially with the mailed fist, they're trying to achieve with the velvet glove. That's the nature of Fabian socialism. Those who are aware of the concept of Fabian socialism. That's why we find that practice of Tzaddikim was to persuade themselves to counteract flattery. Okay, when they would carry the Kofetz Chaim upstairs to the place where he is going to speak, they heard him mumble, "Schlep the nevela, schlep the nevela, schlep the nevela." I hope I'm pronouncing it right. The Tzaddikim were always fighting against the people around them, fighting with themselves not to listen, not to be persuaded. We need not know that we are weak. The full-hearted man is willing to accept any praises he hears. Even without praises, he thinks that he's somebody, all the more so if he hears it from others. So don't for a minute think to yourself that you're somebody, of any value in terms of, being superior to anybody else, or, you're the star of your very own movie. Get your head out of that space immediately. I don't know what "schlep the nevela" means. It's if you know, let me know. I think he's obviously sort of saying something against himself. In terms of what the Kofetz Chaim was uttering as his Talmudim would carry him up the stairs. That is why in the Dora Hamidbar there was no praise for the Jewish people. On the contrary, there was only criticism. The only one that praised him was Bilem. Hashem chose a non-Jew to say praises about the Jewish people, and he said them when none of the Jewish people were present to hear them. Only Moshe Rabbeinu was later told that the praises of Bilam. It's spelled differently. I thought it was Bilam, but it's spelled Bilim, Bileam. I don't know why. Only Moshe Rabbeinu was later told the prophecies that Balaam said in prophecy. I'm just going to pronounce it the way I'm used to. But Moshe Rabbeinu himself didn't praise the Jews. He said, "You low people, and not wise," according to Deuteronomy 32:6. Moshe was angry, according to Exodus 16:20 and Numbers Bamidbar 31:14. Therefore, the Jews of the generation weren't spoilt by praises. That's why if a person is somebody who is willing to criticize him, he's a fortunate man. So you want to be around people who are willing to give you criticism in a respectful manner, not rude or not in a way that's degrading. But you want to be around people who are truthful, and even if that truth sometimes hurts. Even a wife that's always criticizing him is an excellent opportunity to deflate his arrogance. So men, if you're married and your wives sort of pull you aside and give you a hard time sometimes, not all the time, and not beyond that which you can bear, but to the point where they challenge you, that's a good thing, that's a good wife. Ultimately, the meaning of a wife in Hebraic thought is a helpful opponent. I think we'll leave it there. That takes us to page 94. Thank you so much for joining me on this audio, on this journey this morning. I hope you're enjoying this series as much as me. Get out and pick up all 4 volumes of this book. It's not an option. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm telling you to do it, and you can tell me to go jump if you like. But in time, I hope it doesn't mean that there's going to be a time that'll come that you go, I wish I got a hold of those books, and I regret not doing so. Don't get to that spot. Get the books now, because they'll give you the opportunity to look at scriptures with a new eye and a new light and with a new attitude. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me until after Pesach. I hope you have a fantastic Pesach. I hope it goes really well. I hope you have managed to prepare everything before sundown tonight, and the transition from Shabbat into Pesach is a smooth one for you. Thanks again. Until next time, bye for now.